we'll have a formal 10 minutes of introduction, etc., and then you will continue.
And I'll take over as the person comparing for or hosting the event today. And before we start, to tell you a little about Symbiosis Law School. Symbiosis Law School, you're familiar with Symbiosis Law School because you were here for the IALS conference that we held in 2017, the November of 2017. Symbiosis Law School Pune is a constituent of Symbiosis International University, and it stands for Excellence in Legal Education. The law school was piloted and enriched by the vision of Dr. Majumdar, and it was established in the year 1977. And since 2007, this law school has consistently been ranking amongst the top 10 law schools of the country. We are indeed very privileged to collaborate with IALS and host the IALS Distinguished Guest Speaker program. And it's indeed an honor that we have with us Honorable Justice John Hedigan, a very distinguished jurist who will be speaking to the students and faculty on the reflections on a career life in law and judiciary. This topic is surely going to be of much interest to the students, and it will pave a path and set goals for many. Before I introduce the speaker for the day to the audience, which comprises of students and the faculty and few other guests who might have joined. And before I request Justice Hedigan to address the students on the topic for the day, let me introduce Professor Dr. Shashikala Gurpur, who is the director of Symbiosis Law School Pune, and she's also the dean of the law faculty, who will be giving us a brief introduction of the IALS, and she will welcome formally our guests. Dr. Shashikala Gurpur is a distinguished academician and an orator, having presented more than 200 invited lectures, workshops, and seminars in prestigious universities across the globe. She's had a very outstanding career with a wide range of experience in teaching, research, and in the industry. She has more than 26 years of teaching experience, which includes her tenures with the National Law School, Bangalore, Manipal Institute of Communication, University College Cork, Ireland. And her teaching and research interests, they include jurisprudence, media law, international law, human rights research methodology, feminist legal studies, biotechnology, and she has guided more than 65 or 70 master's students and about 12 PhD students. She has about 70 articles and research papers, and she has co-authored books, 12 book chapters, and they're all into her credit. She's the recipient of several distinct honors, awards, and recognition for her contribution in the legal education, gender sensitization, and community outreach programs. Dr. Gurpur has been the member of the Law Commission of India, and she's currently also a member on the Curriculum Development Committee, Bar Council of India, and the Academic Council of the National Judicial Academy at Bhopal. Dr. Gurpur has been instrumental and has made tremendous contribution to internationalization efforts at Symbiosis International University, and especially at the law school under its banner. The internationalization efforts, they include the impressive number of international collaborations with universities across the world, students and faculty exchanges, international projects like the Eurasia Project, the 21st Century Teach Skill Project, DAD and Erasmus grants, and membership with international bodies such as the IALS, ASLI, IUCN, and CAGE. In recognition of her contribution to the Indian legal academia, she was listed in the book 100 Legal Luminaries of India by LexisNexis. Dr. Gurpur has also been conferred with the prestigious annual Kittur Rani Chennamma Award by the Government of Karnataka, India, in the year 2018 for her work towards empowerment of women. I would request Dr. Gurpur now to introduce IALS and also welcome the guest to this lecture series.
Thank you, Dr. Bindu, for that generous introduction, and welcome Justice Hedigan. It's such a pleasure to welcome you to these brilliant lot of students who are looking forward to interacting with you. I wouldn't stand in the way for too long. I must tell you that IALS has been such a boon to us, where you are also a member on the Judicial Council of IALS for last few years, and I've seen your rich contribution. I've seen your interaction and also the unfolding of judicial ethics and judicial values as important ingredient in legal education. We have had the privilege of hosting you here, Justice. And I must tell you that International Association of Law Schools gave us the privilege of becoming members in 2007. Fortunately, that year coincided with my joining as the dean here. And our friendship has grown over the last 13 years with Professor Frank taking over as the president, who initially was the executive president. And then we have had so many novel ideas coming into the platform of IALS. One of the ideas is to look at quality legal education across the world as an initiative, where we are looking at, first we saw in terms of identifying principles of ethics, knowledge and skills, which was the core idea of Carnegie report from the United States of America, coming into the fold of IALS initiatives. IALS has also provided us with the forum for specialized faculty groups, with which we created this collaborative international online learning in contract law, which resulted in a few student essays across 4 universities between Symbiosis students, Bhutan, then in Africa and also in France. So such novel experiments we have done under the aegis of IALS. As you all are aware, dear students, that through IALS we have had the privilege of having hosted one scholar who is a young professor from Kenya recently, whose tenure came to an abrupt end due to the COVID. Nonetheless, we have had a lot of ideas exchange as well as best practices exchange. IALS has granted us the privilege of increasing our collaboration in Ireland with Dublin, University College Dublin. We have had the Galway University in our fold, aside from my own old employer, Cork University. And we have also had the privilege of bringing student delegations from Australia, student delegations from Deakin, because of the linkages we have had in the IALS. Now, this idea of IALS is part of its agenda this year to go virtually in engaging with quality legal education and in bringing its resources through the challenge of COVID being converted into an opportunity. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had the privilege of Justice Hedigan addressing a class of this magnitude, having to travel 8+ hours to Pune and then being here for so many days. And second thing is that this year we are going to start with European Union Legal Studies as a specialization in LLM. Now, European Union Legal Studies was kick-started again with my privilege of having a project from Ireland long ago and developing this idea of EU-India law link. So I was able to use this as a platform to experiment with that. So we started the European Union Legal Studies certificate program, and it became so popular. It became such a nice launch pad for internationalization and study abroad program for students way back in 2009. So what started with about 30 students today turned out to be a program with more than 100 students, and us getting a curriculum development platform with the Eurasia project. And this year we have had value-added courses from European Union Legal Studies. So we have now about 28 courses. We are looking forward to developing JA Monnet chair or JA Monnet module with the help of that, while rolling out this specialization group in LLM. So this is how we have gone ahead, and our IALS linkages have enriched our European Union Legal Studies input as well. Like, for example, we had a professor coming from, 2 professors coming from Ireland and teaching some of the modules. We have had online collaboration by Darius Whelan, who was teaching one of the modules in public health law and mental health law, to mention a few. So IALS this year, in its virtual enrichment of quality legal education, has introduced this innovative idea of judges addressing the students. We have had the debut attempt with the Justice Richard Goldstone, which was a super hit kind of input with the students. Last week I have had the town hall with the students, which revealed that they got so much of wise exposure, experiential nuggets from Justice Richard. I'm sure students that you are going to be much more enriched or equally enriched, if not equally, with the Justice Hedigan coming in to talk to you with not only the shared past between India and Ireland in terms of borrowing on the directive principles of state policy, but also in terms of Ireland's unique leadership in not only creating questions for European Court of Human Rights, but also in kickstarting some of the transformation of human rights law within the European Union. So before I make way for Justice Hedigan, I'm delighted to create this platform with the kind help of IALS to listen to this rich judicial trajectory of Justice Hedigan through the talk that is going to come. And I'm sure that he is also going to be the beacon light for many of you who have the ambition to get into judiciary or get into international legal careers. So I wish you a great journey with Sir, and I wish you equally enriching experience with a brilliant lot of students. I must be, if not, humbly submitting before you, if not with pride for our students, that our students come through an all India level selection process. For our 300 seats, we have almost 15 to 20,000 applications. So they go through a very rigorous process of selection. So the students who are in your class could be termed as top 1% of the Indian legal student, law student community. Therefore, I'm sure you are going to have a very illuminating time and a challenging interaction, as much as inspiring, energetic, youthful moments. Thank you for joining us in this kind of a ritual of enriching these and enlightening these young minds.
Thank you very much, Gurpur ma'am. And now let me introduce to the audience Honorable Justice John Hedigan. Born in Dublin, he was educated at Belvedere College, Trinity College, Dublin, and King's Inn before he was called to the bar in 1976 and to the inner bar in 1990. He became a bencher of the King's Inn in 2002. He was called to the King's Bar in 1986 and to the Bar of New South Wales, Australia in 1993. Justice Hedigan chaired the Civil Service Disciplinary Appeals Tribunal from 1992 to 1994. He was appointed as the judge of the European Court of Human Rights in November 1989 and served until April 2007, where he was involved in many important cases. He was subsequently appointed as a judge of the High Court in 2007 and served until his elevation to the new Court of Appeal on its creation in 2016. He retired from the Court of Appeal in October 2018, and he was also appointed chair of the Irish Banking Culture Board. We look forward to hearing Justice Hedigan, and over to you, sir. I'm sure it's going to be an extremely enriching experience for all of us who are here as the audience.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone in Pune from Dublin, and good afternoon as far as your time scale is there. I just have one little question first of all. It is intended, I think, to show a brief extract from the webcasting of a case. Will you play that at a moment when I ask for it, when I'm going to come and deal with it? Okay, that's fine. Well, first of all, let me say it is I who certainly feel humble in front of such distinguished legal academics. I've always said that I was a practicing lawyer. I never had any pretensions to being an academic lawyer. I was just happy to pass my exams. And I'm very grateful to my teachers for having enabled me to do that. I've always been a practicing lawyer, and so it's a humbling experience for me when I appear in front of great legal academics like yourselves. And I think I remember when I visited Pune, I quoted from, I don't often quote from the Bible, but on this occasion I found a very interesting quotation from Daniel 12.3, which is the Old Testament. They who instruct many to justice shall shine like bright stars for all eternity. So I think students, you may honour your learned professors very much. They are certainly leading you towards knowledge of the law, and that really means a true understanding of life. It's great for me to be back in Pune again, even if only virtually. I remember my visit there almost 3 years ago with great fondness. We were very well looked after. We had a most interesting meeting. And in fact, last night, I found my little Symbiosis Law School booklet, which was presented to me and everyone else for making notes. No lawyer should be without one. And so I have very fond memories of my visit to India and Pune. As Professor Gurpur has pointed out, there are extraordinarily close links between Ireland and India. They go right back to the struggle that we both had against colonialism, fighting the same enemy really and achieving independence in our different ways. I'm aware also that when drafting the Indian Constitution, the Irish Constitution was very close and kept very closely in mind by the drafters of the Indian Constitution, and certain parts of it are very closely following the Irish Constitution of 1937. So there are very strong links between our two countries, and I'm delighted to add just this one tiny little link as well here today. So I'm to talk about a career in the law, and I suppose the best place to begin is at the beginning. I was born and brought up on a farm just outside the city of Dublin. My first tasks as a kid helping out around the farm were things as simple as mucking out stables and helping to milk the cows. I remember those little activities very fondly. I was fortunate enough to attend school in Belvedere College, the same school that James Joyce went to and wrote about, in fact. And subsequently, or at the same time, actually, once I got to my teen years, I used to work in my father's business in a small way to make money during holidays. So I had a very non-legal type of background, if you like. When I left school in 1967, I was a bit footloose and probably a bit ahead of myself, and I set off around the world in search of I know not what. But I spent 3.5 years away, and a large part of it, in fact, in Australia, and wound up as the night manager of the Whale Car Wash in Bondi Junction in Sydney. I thought I was on top of the world. I was just 19 years old and I was actually in charge of something. So it was very exciting and interesting. However, I decided to go back home, and I did in 1971, and I started off studying law in Trinity College, Dublin, a university founded in 1541, I think it was. It's a very, very old university in any event. While I was there, I studied law and history and classical civilization, those latter two being great interests of mine throughout my life and which I still love reading. When I was in Trinity College, myself and a number of other students co-founded the Trinity branch of Amnesty International, and I was selected to sit on the national executive, the Irish National Executive of Amnesty International, at the time chaired by Sean McBride, who was the son of one of the executed 1916 leaders. and who actually had the very interesting distinction of holding the Nobel Peace Prize and the Lenin Peace Prize at the same time. I don't think anybody else has ever done that. Mary Robinson, subsequently President of Ireland, was also on that executive board at the time. I got called to the bar in 1976, and just at that same time I was nominated as Amnesty International's national coordinator for the campaign against torture. As unthinkable as slavery was our motto. At the bar, I practiced in a system that would be quite familiar to you. I was very sorry to hear about the passing away of Mr. Ram, who was an advocate of outstanding abilities in Indian legal history, a veritable lion in defense of justice. He addressed us at the Pune meeting, and we were all very taken with him. The system in Ireland is much the same as that in England: barristers, solicitors, common law system, and I practiced very much in the area of administrative law, constitution law, commercial law. You have to have a very wide range of abilities in a small market like Ireland, because if you specialised in one particular area, there probably wouldn't be enough to allow you to make a living. I also had a great interest in human rights, and really that in a way derived from my interest in international politics, and particularly in American politics, which was fueled by the election of John F. Kennedy as president. Being of very near Irish extraction, it was a sensation in Ireland when he got elected, and I remember being allowed to stay up late on the night of November the 8th, 1960 to observe his election. One of the great struggles that his administration had was the civil rights area, and our TV screens were full of film of dogs, police dogs attacking Black Americans who were trying to protest. So from that, my interest in human rights developed. There were not a lot of human rights type cases that I was involved in Ireland, because there weren't very many. We do have in our constitution a whole section devoted to fundamental rights. And because of the strength of that, very few cases arose that would wind up going to Strasbourg. And the result is there are actually very few Irish cases in Strasbourg. But the ones that do go there, or have gone there, have been very significant and important cases. My interest in Strasbourg, anyway, developed while I was practicing at the bar, and I became aware of the vast increase in the amount of cases going there. The court was founded in 1959. Its very first case, in fact, was Lawless versus Ireland, which was an interesting portent of the future, because so many other cases, Airy, Bosphorus, Ayr, Norris versus Ireland, became key cases in the jurisprudence of the European Court of Human Rights. But it delivered its first judgment in Lawless in 1961. And initially, the court actually met only, I think, maybe once a year for a few years. So there were very, very few cases. But then in the 1970s, things started to take off, and the number of cases increased exponentially. So much so that the system that existed was overwhelmed, really, by the numbers involved, and a reformation of the whole system there was embarked upon. And as it happened, my wife was a lawyer working in our Department of Foreign Affairs, and she was the agent for Ireland at the Court of Human Rights. That meant organised the defence of the few cases taken against us, but it also meant that she sat in a committee that drafted the protocol that was to reform the entire system. So I was getting an insider's view all the time. It was fascinating as I heard the developing plans. And the result of that was that I wrote about the changes about to commence in Strasbourg in an article entitled Revolution in Strasbourg, which was published in the Irish Law Times in 1996, I think it was, or possibly early 1997, whatever, around that time anyway. I suppose it was as a result of that when the new arrangements were finally ratified and it was decided that there was to be, I'm not going to go into the details of that, it's too complicated for this short talk, but when it was decided that there was to be a new full-time permanent court established in Strasbourg, a court of human rights, then the election process for judges to that court was commenced. More in hope than expectation, I put my name forward, and the system was that the government had to submit 3 names for consideration by the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, which is made up of parliamentarians from the 41 countries, now 47, of the Council of Europe, which is different from the European Union, 27 countries. The Council of Europe is devoted to human rights and democracy and the rule of law, and certain other things that flow from that. So in any event, I put my name forward and I wound up on the list of 3 and was interviewed in Paris by the ad hoc committee of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe and was ultimately elected a judge. It was curious in that my election, along with almost all of the other new judges, was in January 1998, but we were not actually coming into existence as a new court until November 1998. So I had this strange kind of hiatus in between, and in the course of that time, we had, I think, about 4 meetings of the court elect because we had to draft our own rules and do things like organize our IT and so on. It was a fascinating time, I must say, but it also was a great opportunity to get to know a lot of my new colleagues. And it was very fortunate, I hope it's still the same, I think it is, that there was a very warm relationship built up between us all. We were all hugely excited and enthusiastic about the opportunity that was coming our way, and would be greatly looked forward to it. There was 40 judges at the time in November 1998. The 41st post had not been filled. The Russian candidate had tragically been killed in a car crash, so they had to go back to square one and elect a judge. The judges are required to be completely independent, to owe as much of a duty to all of the people of Europe, to all of the member states, as to their own country. To that extent, they were always described as the judge elected in respect of Ireland, rather than the Irish judge, a perhaps slightly clumsy way of expressing the fact that they sat in their individual capacity. But the challenge, of course, was an enormous one. One court for 850 million people. For Indians who are used to huge statistics, these things may sound sort of run-of-the-mill, but for Europeans and certainly for Irish people, these are staggering figures. Also, it was one single court. Could it possibly work? I suppose the attitude we took was to do the best that we could, and that is what we proceeded to do. Big backlogs built up. I will maybe, if there's some time at the end, refer very briefly to boring statistics, but which are pretty jaw-dropping. But nonetheless, we did what we could, which was the only approach that we possibly could take. But where did the court come from? Where is this whole idea of international supervision deriving from? A lot of criticism that this court is something of an interfering busybody has of course come from countries who are subjected to a judgment that is embarrassing politically and socially as well. Even individuals such as the famous Justice Scalia of the United States asked the question, who the heck do they think they are? Well, of course, the whole origin and thinking behind the European Court of Human Rights is that human rights cannot be protected properly at national level. The history of Europe throughout the 20s and the 30s, with the development of communism, authoritarian communism and fascism, showed that in fact the real enemy of people's rights were their own governments, as they subverted the rights of people. And ultimately the conclusion was reached that you had to have some form of international supervision, where governments, countries, member states would supervise each other. And that in fact was the original idea. Although individual petition became the main type of case before the court, the original intention was that it should be states would supervise states and bring cases against them. This, as the convention was being conceived, this was accentuated by the development of apartheid in South Africa, which again showed that the real enemy of the people and their rights was the national government. So it's from that thinking that the European Court of Human Rights emerged. International supervision, whereby countries judge each other. So when certain countries say, well, who the heck do they think they are? They're interfering in our domestic affairs. It is a bizarre sort of comment to make, because the European Court of Human Rights doesn't have any other role. That is its role, to interfere in the internal affairs of individual countries, because it's told to do that by those very same countries themselves.